Rob Pelinka and JJ Redick held the team's preseason press conference today, and they had a lot to talk about. A whole bunch of topics, and everything from about the team, injuries on the team, the trades or lack thereof they made throughout the summer, and overall moves they made, health updates, and much more. And we're gonna break it all down, particularly about two different topics today. We'll talk about pretty much all of them throughout the next week or so, but I wanted to touch on two of them in particular today, being about the health update to Jared Vanderbilt, Christian Wood, and Christian Koloko, and then about the potential of them making a trade and what they have to work with, or if they're even willing to make that trade to begin with, as he did get pressed on it and had to talk about it, meeting Rob Pelinka, if they would be willing to do it in the future. So we'll break it all down. But before we get too far into it, if you want to talk about the NBA or Lakers with other NBA fans in real time, then don't forget to check out our NBA Discord. We have a daily discussion board for all things NBA or Lakers related, a live game chat, and much more. Or if you don't have Discord, then feel free to follow me on Twitter or X to hear my thoughts on everything NBA and Lakers related. There will be a link for both of them in the video description down below. But without further ado, let's dive right into it. And I think we'll begin by talking about the possibility of them making a trade. Rob Pelinka did get pressed about the idea of it again, asked by a reporter if he would be willing to make a trade with their two tradable first-round draft picks.
Are you open to potentially trading or using those picks to upgrade the roster? And if so, would that only be for like a bigger kind of reshaping the roster type trade, or would something more marginal, a more marginal type of improvement be, suffice as well?
Yeah, I think the philosophy that JJ and I are aligned on is we want to build sustainable Lakers excellence. And I think when you talk about moves, you can make a move that backfires. I think every GM has made a trade that they say, maybe that one wasn't ideal. But every lens that we look through has to lead to sustainable Laker excellence. So the direct answer to your question is yes, we would do a trade with both picks if that would lead to sustainable Lakers excellence. We would also use one pick to make a marginal upgrade if we felt like it was the right thing to do.
They did have three of them at the NBA draft, but of course they used one of them to draft Dalton Knecht, who they are very high on, with that being particularly true of JJ Redick. So I don't find it very likely that they trade him, nor do I want them to trade him. So as of right now, they have two tradable first-round draft picks, a number of second-round draft picks, and then a decent amount of young talent, albeit I don't find it very likely for them to trade much, if any, of it. But with that being said, Rob Pelinka did clarify that he would be open to trading their two first-round draft picks, or even one of them if it would come to it, to making a more marginal move along the edges to improve their rotation, or whatever it might be. But he did say again that they are open to making a trade, whether that be for a star player, a role player, or whatever it might be. He said they would be open to doing it, but only if it would fall into the line of maintaining the Lakers' excellence. He referred to that multiple times and really about sustaining that kind of excellence. I don't know if he's talking about the way they view trades or about the Lakers' identity in general, but that's what he kept referring to and what it would come down to if they would make a trade. So obviously it's gotta be a no-brainer for them to make that kind of trade. Again, that doesn't have to be a star player kind of trade or even a marginal trade. It's gotta be one that they view that would maintain their excellence or help them sustain a good future, and I think that's kind of what he is relating to here. Often when you make a trade, you want it to be about your team not only now, but hopefully in the future as well. Obviously there can be a trade or two that can happen to improve your team for only one season, and that can be beneficial if you're a top tier contender. But for a team like the Lakers that have a fairly limited window, everyone keeps thinking it's smaller than it is with LeBron practically being ageless, but with him about to be 40, you would think that he will be retiring sooner rather than later. Obviously won't be in the NBA for probably 5 more years, so they gotta be thinking about their future, and they rightfully are doing so as well. So any trade they would make would have to fall in line with that. Probably with a younger player. They don't want to trade for an aging veteran at this point, so you do gotta keep that in mind when talking about if they would make a trade or not. It's gotta fall into that line that Pelinka kept repeating, sustaining Laker excellence, and while we don't know the pure definition of that, I imagine that means a fairly young player, or simply a player that they could build their team around. Maybe not a star player, doesn't have to be one, but at the very least a high-end role player that would fit their long-term future, or at least relatively long-term future. I don't think they'll be looking to trade for any rental players, that's really not in their forte. and definitely not their long-term plan as well. Moving on though, Rob Pelinka gave some interesting updates and details about the health of their team, primarily about Jared Vanderbilt, Christian Wood, Christian Koloko, Gabe Vincent, and Jalen Hood-Schifino, all of which were asked about, and he did give official updates and confirmation on them. But beginning with Vanderbilt, probably the most asked about guy in regard to health, and Pelinka did confirm that he had an off-season foot surgery, actually 2 of them. One was not related to a new injury, it was from the same one that he got hurt from back in February. He got that cleaned up and officially had it corrected, and then while he had that one corrected, he underwent a different procedure on his other foot. He didn't really clarify what that actual issue was, or if it was really a big time issue to begin with, but he did say that while he underwent one procedure, he underwent a procedure on the other foot as well, and that he currently is in a return to play program that he is working through. Not fully cleared yet, but they are optimistic that he will be available when the quote-unquote real games start. So likely referring to the regular season here. He didn't officially confirm nor deny that, but he made it sound like he's about a month away at this point, which would line up pretty closely with the regular season opener.
Of Vando, this offseason he did have 2 procedures, one on each of his feet. The procedures were highly successful, and he's on a return to play program that so far has been lockstep and very promising, led by our new director of performance, Dr. Leroy Sims, and his team. They've been doing a great job, and we have a lot of optimism that when the real games start, he'll be available. Now, between now and then, there's still about a month, and there's a lot of ramp-up steps that need to go well, and so hopefully there won't be setbacks. But so far, very promising.
Just to follow up on the Vando update, can you tell us something about the nature of the procedures and the timing of the procedures?
Yeah, he had them together. So he last year had a lingering sort of bone spur on the back of his foot, and since he was going to go under surgery for the injury that he had last year in the Boston Celtics game, the doctors had a discussion with him. Hey, since you're going to be off your foot for several months, why not get the other thing cleaned up so it doesn't rear its head? So he had both things fixed. And we're grateful that he has the issues in his feet behind him, and it's just now a matter of getting fully ramped up and ready to be cleared.
And again, while he did not confirm a return date for Jared Vanderbilt, he did give helpful updates and confirmation about what Vanderbilt went through over the offseason in regard to his foot, or now feet. Moving on though, he talked a little bit about Christian Wood, and he did confirm that Wood had a separate cleanup surgery on the same knee that he had an injury with last season, going back to that late March, or we don't know exactly when he had the injury, but that's about when he got ruled out, and it obviously did stem from that again. He did say that he is progressing well and will be reevaluated in 6 weeks from the time of that press conference, so about early November, and that likely means he would return no later than late November.
Christian Wood, on the same knee he had surgery on last season, he did have a separate cleanup surgery that went well, performed by Dr. Chris Jones at UCLA Health, and he'll be reevaluated in 6 weeks and is progressing well.
Moving on again though, he confirmed that both Gabe Vincent and Jalen Hood-Schifino are cleared to play. And some people have been wondering about that, so I'm glad he was both asked about it and then confirm it too. They have no issues right now, and both of them are cleared to play, both for training camp, preseason, and then the regular season too. Definitely a good thing for Gabe Vincent. He only played 11 games for them last season, and they definitely need him with not only the health they're dealing with both Vanderbilt and Wood, but their lack of defense within their backcourt as well. So great to hear that Vincent's healthy and likely had a fully healthy offseason too. And then for Jalen Hood-Schifino, Redick has been talking about him as a quote-unquote standout over the summer, so who knows, maybe he could even crack the rotation eventually. Probably not their day one rotation, but maybe he could surprise us and play really well throughout training camp and eventually crack the rotation. But then finally for Christian Koloko, he has not yet been given full clearance by the NBA's return to play panel, but the Lakers are quote-unquote very optimistic after their assessment of him that he will be able to play. And Pelinka did say that he's still with the panel, but part of that is simply logistics that have to happen. So kind of referring to it being at the end, and that we will hear about it very soon, and that he thinks the final decision on Koloko will be made sooner rather than later.
Signed Christian Koloko. He's we have optimism. We did a deep dive with our medical staff, again, Dr. Vigil, Dr. Jones, Dr. Sims, and have a lot of optimism and hope. He's still with the panel, and part of that is just logistics that have to happen. But we think that'll happen sooner than later, and whatever the decision of the league is, we'll respect. But again, we have a lot of optimism, and if he's cleared 7'5" wingspan, 7'1", I think we saw a lot of promise in him when we scouted him, and when he was at Arizona, was almost a first-round pick. So to get a player like that we can bring along and develop and may even impact games this year when he gets cleared is something we're really excited about.
So I don't know if that means before training camp. They're definitely running out of time from that. And if you're not aware, he does have to be given that full clearance by the return to play panel to even participate in team activities, meaning training camp, preseason, or definitely the regular season too. He can't even practice them until that happens, so they definitely have to have that figured out, and again, hopefully sooner rather than later, which thankfully does appear to be the likely route. Apart from all that though, one more important tidbit from the interview is that Rob Pelinka mentioned they have hired a new lead doctor of performance. They apparently hired Leroy Sims, and I don't know if that means they moved on from their entire old medical staff. I definitely wouldn't be opposed to it after what happened last season, but hopefully this does help prevent a repeat of the amount of injuries they dealt with last season. I mean, it really can't be any worse. About half of their rotation, or definitely half of their role players, got hurt at one point or another. Between Jared Vanderbilt, Christian Wood, Cam Reddish, Gabe Vincent, Jalen Hood-Schifino if you want to count him, Rui Hachimura even for a little bit, and a few minor injuries throughout the entire season, they dealt with a ton of them. And although you can point to a few of them as kind of freak accidents that can't be blamed on a medical staff or a training staff, a lot of them probably did come down to either inadequate performance, nutrition, or simply not a well-rounded approach to their overall care. I don't want to hate on them too much, as I obviously was not there to evaluate them, but something definitely had to be done, and I'm glad they hired a new head doctor of performance at the bare minimum. With that being said though, I think that'll pretty much do it for the trade talk and the injury talk that Rob Pelinka had to update us about. Definitely a lot more to go through, and we'll talk about it throughout the next week, but I think it was very important to touch on both the trade talk and their health updates that Rob Pelinka either confirmed or touched on throughout the press conference. And with that being said, what do you guys think? How do you feel about what Rob Pelinka had to say, or what JJ Redick had to say throughout the press conference, and directly related to both the injuries and the trade updates? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it, and if you enjoyed the video, then don't forget to drop a like, hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.